everyone, and welcome back for another episode of The Bright Side of Life. My name is Melissa Bright, and I have here today Britt Frank. Now, if you follow me on social media, I had mentioned her yesterday, talking about her wonderful book, The Science of Stuck. Britt Frank is a psychotherapist, an educator and trauma specialist, and like I just said, she is the author of this book, The Science of Stuck. So we are going to be talking all about that today. So without further ado, Britt, welcome to the Bright Side of Life. How are you?
Hi, thank you so much for having me on. I've been looking forward to this forever.
I know, likewise. So I always start at a certain place with all of my guests, and the question kind of is how you arrived where you here today. I know that can be an extremely long story, but I just like to give my listeners a background of how far people really can come in life. And I know about your story from your book. So why don't you share a little bit about that?
Oh, that's so funny. I arrived here today courtesy of the Hot Mess Express, like direct line from shit show to not shit show. Now, I think most people get into the helping fields either from I need to work out my own stuff, or I have worked out my own stuff and now I have something to share. Most people, it's a little bit of both.
Yep.
So I did not pop out of college a fully formed adult with mental health information to share. I was an absolute disaster. I had drug addictions, eating disorders. Don't get me started on the relationship patterns of absolute shenaniganery. And then as I was fortunate to have really, really good help and access to good help, which not everybody does,
Right.
I just fell in love with the work. People say to me like, oh, did you get into this field to help people? And I'm like, I'm not that nice. I mean, the fact that it's helpful is cool,
Right.
but I actually got into the fields because I was so just like, people need to know how their brains brain. It's like driver's ed. Like, if you don't know how to drive, you're not going to have the ability to
Mm.
go places, and our brains are the same. So I just fell in love with the work, and I was obnoxious about all I want to do is read about and talk about this stuff. So when I was 31, I said, screw it, quit my job, went to grad school, and here we are. 12, 13, however many years. I'm 44. Do the math.
Wow. Oh, I love that you shared that because I feel like so many people in this world just feel like
Stuck.
stuck, first of all, and like something's wrong with me.
Yeah.
And, I've been on my healing and growth journey for 4 years, and it was all because of the same things as you. I thought, first, I did think something was wrong with me because why can't I be at a certain point in my life, so on and so forth. And I just got super curious also about whatever it was I was reading and learning about. I went down all the rabbit holes, and I'm very glad that I'm a curious person because it's landed me here helping myself first and now helping other people. And you just want to like shout it from the rooftops because of how many people are struggling with being stuck and shame and all that stuff. So, um, I guess I also want to ask you, with your book, The Science of Stuck, stuck can mean so many different things. So, can you first describe what is stuck and what can that mean for people?
Yeah. It's funny. Like, I didn't call the book The Science of Trauma or The Science of Mental Health Recovery. First of all, because that's boring. But two, not everybody identifies as having trauma or having a mental health challenge or needing therapy. And that's great. But
Yep.
everybody with a pulse, and I know this because I work with very successful, shiny, high functioning people, everybody gets stuck somewhere. Now, the areas are not always the same and the degrees are not the same, but the general areas are going to be fitness, family, finances, friends, intimacy. Like, those are the general categories of humaning where people are prone to get stuck.
Yeah.
And so once I came up with the title because someone was asking me like, just like, what do you actually do? Like, explain to me in like a sentence your work. I'm like, oh geez, okay. I help people with the science of stuck and how to get unstuck. And I was like, oh, and she's
Boom.
like, that's a book title. And that's actually how the title came to be. But we don't have to make it. And again, I'm not diminishing or minimizing the reality of mental health struggles.
Mhm.
I take meds, I go to therapy, I have a diagnosis, several. I'm neurodivergent. I'm not minimizing it. I
Yeah.
am saying, can we take it out of the realm of academic, blah, blah, and just talk about what the fuck we're talking about? You're
Yep.
stuck. And as someone who was, addicted to drugs, I'm not minimizing it, but like saying I'm stuck is a lot less shamey than going, I am an addict and forever I must identify as an addict. And if that's your jam and that works for you, that's great. It didn't for me.
Right.
It's just going to the I'm stuck takes some of the intensity off of the dilemma.
Yeah.
And our nervous systems can't heal when we're at retcon 5. So using the word stuck, it doesn't magic the problems away, but it does make them a little more accessible. And like I was a lot more willing to look at my stuckness than
Mhm.
my drug addiction. My stuckness seems less scary than my clinical depression or my personality disorder or insert diagnoses of choice. I had many. So yeah, stuck. We all get
Yep.
stuck.
It's literally the perfect title for that reason because like you said, some people won't identify with if they have trauma or if they have this or like they might, but they're like, I sure as hell don't want to go read about my addiction or I don't want to like, no, thank you. But they can kind of come to terms with I am a little bit stuck and I would like to do something about it. Maybe I'll just go pick up this book, you know?
I hope so.
Yeah. And that is like first of all, what I loved about your book is you do take cliff notes from so many different other like experts and give it to us in a very easy, digestible, also practical way. Um, what else was I going to say with that? And you address all that stuff, like you said, the relationships, the lack of motivation, the whatever. It runs the gamut because we can either fall in many categories, maybe one, so on and so forth. I can't speak highly enough about this book. So we are going to kind of first, I'm going to touch on some of the points that really like spoke out to me. So anxiety is a huge, huge thing for many, many people wherever they are. But you actually like do say that anxiety can be our superpower. So can you explain what that means? And, my listeners might be freaking out, being like, okay, lady, what do you
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah, I know. Hot take. Anxiety is good for you. F you, Britt. I hate you. I know. I don't
Right.
I have it too. I'm not saying it feels good or that you should like it or that you should accept it. Like it sucks. It can be life debilitating. It could be
Word.
medically life threatening. I'm not, again, my big disclaimer on all my work is my work assumes that you have choices, relative safety, and access to
Mm,
resources. If you are
yeah.
in an abusive situation in a war torn country with no food, that's not being stuck. That's being oppressed. And that is not what my work is for.
Yeah.
So that's a really, I think, in the Instagrammy, everybody could do
Yes.
everything is just, that's just not true.
Yes.
So stuckness assumes that you have some choices. So going back to anxiety, um, we get so, and again, I'm the captain of this I hate anxiety, make it stop team. I don't like it either.
Yep.
But we get so hypnotized by the discomfort of anxiety that many of us, me included, never learned what it's for. It's like if you didn't know that a smoke detector is going to make a really loud sound and you're just standing in a building doing your thing, and then it's like, you're going to be like, what's wrong? Well,
Yep.
there is something wrong. The smoke alarm is not the problem. The smoke alarm is the
Mm,
signal. And I was sort of horrified and relieved and comforted and dismayed to learn that anxiety is not, it's a problem,
right.
but anxiety is not our problem. And I can't tell you how many clients, and again, me too,
Right.
come in and they're like, my problem is anxiety. If I could just make this anxiety stop, everything would be roses and ponies. And it's like, but anxiety is a smoke alarm. It's like the check engine light of your car. When I had no money and was just a disaster human, I would put tape over my check engine light because I couldn't afford to fix my car and I didn't want to have to see the light mocking me with your engine is going to explode.
Right.
But the light is not the problem. The light is a
Mm.
signal pointing to the problem. And so it's not make my anxiety go away. It's decode what my anxiety is pointing me to so that I can address the real problem. And not everybody knows the problem. And that's why I have a job. I get it. It can be tricky when your brain's on fire to figure out what's my problem. I don't know. My heart is racing and I'm going to puke. That's a
Mm.
problem. It's not the
Yep.
problem.
Yep.
So yay, anxiety. Yay, anxiety.
Ugh. Okay. So I had debilitating anxiety for 10 years. I lost my mom when I was 25, and
Mm.
somewhere in like the 2 or 3 months like range after she passed away, something started happening in my body. It's 2011, and I think I Googled on whatever phone I had, like anxiety, maybe. And it started saying what I was having. Like, mine was always like nausea. And the best way I described it to my ex was if somebody came up and scared me and like I jumped, that was the feeling in my body for hours on end. Like
Yeah.
I didn't have panic attacks. I had it for hours and hours and hours. Um, in about year 7, I finally was able to place that my anxiety came from when life was so good. I was waiting for something bad to happen. I was waiting for to lose somebody else that was so close to me. So I'm like, I got to be on guard. In 2020 is I literally started therapy because I could no longer handle my anxiety being so debilitating. And it was the moment that she explained to me the fight, flight, or freeze was what was happening. And that finally made like sense to me.
Mm.
And just with learning that really, really took my anxiety down to a whole different, like lower level that was way more manageable. And
Thank you for sharing that. Like,
yeah,
there was nothing wrong with you. There was something wrong, but like, it's not what's wrong with you. It's wow, what happened to you?
exactly. Exactly. And so I feel like so many people are on a different journey with their anxiety. And that's why I love how you give the definition of the check engine light, because it is pointing to a different problem. And it really can work in your favor, because that is what unfolded for me to go on my healing journey, was to first
Mm.
address my anxiety, you know? So I love that you started there, because I'm like, I can relate.
It's tricky because often what we call an anxiety problem is a trauma problem or a grief problem or a relationship problem. And it's really confronting to look at grief because grief
Oh,
you can't fix it. You can't bring someone back. Now it doesn't mean there's nothing you can do. And it sounds
right.
like you had amazing help. But the
Yeah.
task of grief is not to get over it. The task
Right.
of grief is how do I live with this reality now? If it's anxiety,
Mm.
it's like, well, it's not, at least if it's anxiety, I don't know exactly know what it is. And maybe it's me. And if it's my fault, then I can fix it. It's like there's something comforting about anxiety because we feel like if I suck and I'm
Mm.
the problem, then maybe there's a fix versus something terrible happens and there is no fix. There's a
Yeah.
way to heal, but grief just sort of changes the shape of your soul. And then you have to learn to adjust in the new shape. That's
Yeah.
not, there's something wrong with you.
Yep.
That's, dang, life is hard sometimes.
Preach. So true. So true. Now, another point in your book that I have realized, and it's really, really helping me, is there are actually benefits of staying stuck. And this one is the best to hear ever when you're really, really tired of feeling so damn shameful about yourself. That's why I love it. So, can you maybe explain some of the benefits of staying stuck?
Oh, between anxiety and staying stuck benefits, you're going to have me canceled. This bitch is saying that anxiety is good for you and that I am doing this because I like it. Like, F you, cancel next. So,
Uh,
okay, it's been fun, internet.
I know.
No, I actually do stand by this because it sounds really bad to say you're getting something out of even the worst behavior.
Yep.
Now, it's important, again, disclaimer, I'm not victim blaming. And full disclosure, I've been sexually assaulted. I've been in a domestically violent series of relationships. I am not saying that that was my fault. And I'm
Right.
not saying that anything anybody is up to is their fault.
Right.
I am saying every single bad behavior has a benefit, or we wouldn't be doing it. Like things
Yep.
that serve us no purpose don't get sticky and they're not hard to break. And I was so like offended when it was suggested to me by a 12-step sponsor that like, all
Mm.
right, well, what is this addiction doing for you? How dare you? Nothing. It's doing nothing. My life is destroyed and everything is crap and it's doing nothing. And she's like, yeah, I that stuff is true.
Yeah.
Also true, if there were no benefits to a behavior, the behavior wouldn't be there. So people are like, well, what kind of benefits could there be?
Mm.
And again, I'm not saying everybody who has been assaulted or in a sexually or domestically violent situation is the same. I'm saying for me, dating really, really toxic people was not, I wasn't like sitting there thinking, how can I avoid my childhood trauma? Let me date someone who is so messed up that their complete dumpster fire situation is going to distract me. That wasn't conscious.
Yeah.
But in my recovery process, it became very clear, wow, one of the functions of my dating patterns was avoidance of my own crap. One of
Mm.
the functions of my drug addiction was avoidance of my own crap. At least if I'm doing speed, my brain's going too fast to think about anything. So until it stops working, speed is a marvelous way to run ahead of your stuff. It will catch up, and that is a terrible idea and it doesn't work. So don't do it.
Yeah.
But
Mm.
it's functional. And so without getting into the shame of it, can we just be willing to, if we can look at any bad behavior like a business person, do a cost benefit analysis. Most people can fill up the cost column. What's this behavior costing you? What are you losing out because of it? But if the benefit column stays blank, we're not going to be able to change it. We need to
Yeah.
know what job it's doing, so then we can reassign something else to do that job. But the job of self-protection is important. We just want it to be mindful, conscious, and choice driven, not unconscious and addiction driven. But the job needs to get done one way or another.
Yes. I love how you said reassign the job because
Mhm.
man, what one thing that like stuck out to me, and I am gonna read the benefits of staying stuck. I'll just touch on them. But the first one was energy conservation. And that is something that I am really, really struggling with right now is chronic fatigue, what I think is chronic fatigue for 4 years. So while I am like trying to build my coaching business and also work another job, it's like I am so effing tired. So maybe you're not just lazy, Melissa. Like you really are trying to conserve energy just to make it to 8 p.m. when you can go to sleep or whatever. That made me feel better about myself, but not an excuse. So the top 9 benefits of staying stuck, I'm just going to read them really quickly. Energy conservation, image preservation, risk management, control, pain numbing, familiarity, safety, financial security, and relationship equilibrium. She breaks all these down like in her book, but guys, those are benefits to staying stuck, and there's some good ones in there. So when you hear that stuff, you can kind of say, wow, I can see that. And now I can change it. Like you said, once you become aware, you have a choice and it's huge.
Without shame. Like I don't want
Seriously.
to I don't want to mess up my relationship, because even though I know this relationship needs to end, because I'm worried what will people say and what will people think and the energy it takes to leave a relationship. That's all valid. It's not, like you said, it's not an excuse. But
Right.
if we know that you're lacking in energy and that everyone in your community is going to shun you if you leave this
Yeah.
person, then we need to focus on building up your social supports and building up your energy before you're even going to be able to make that change. So
Yep.
it's not like, what's wrong with you? It's let's deal with what's true, so then
Yeah.
we can find better ways of getting those needs met.
Exactly. And if you guys haven't figured out by now, nothing is wrong with you. Like if there's any overarching thing you can take from this episode is nothing's wrong with you. And there is usually always a reason why X is happening and so on and so forth. But um, shame will sometimes just, whoa, take us so far. Okay. Now tell me if this is going to kind of fall into the same thing and if you've kind of already touched on this, but there is a truth and we've kind of been talking about it. The truth about like laziness and motivation. That was something that really helped me also. So can you just talk a little bit about those two things?
Oh, sure.
I hope I'm not
So
being too broad. Am I being
nah,
too broad with my
nah,
questions? Okay.
not at all. No, I'll
Okay.
answer them. I'll zoom in if I need to. But I love
Perfect.
that question because the I'm so lazy, I'm so unmotivated, and all the motivational gurus online that are like, here's how you can feel motivated. But like from a neuroscience lens, there's really no such thing as unmotivated. Like that's
Mm,
not a thing. Your brain is literally always motivated. So the question is, what's it motivated by? Because it's not always motivated by achieving goals and peak performance and like slaying the day. Sometimes it's motivated to not die. Sometimes it's motivated to stay safe. Sometimes it's motivated to conserve energy or to stay small. So
yeah.
it's not how do I get motivated? It's what am I being motivated by? How true is that? Like, if you've got 9 kids and 8 dogs and aging parents and like a farm to manage, that's going to limit your energy and your choices. So, like,
Yeah.
if that person came to me and was like, I don't know why I can't get on my email and I really want to start my social media account and what's wrong with me?
Mm,
It's like, okay, you're a little maxed. So, like,
yeah.
your laziness is not laziness. It's legit. You have no bandwidth
Mm,
and no
yeah.
options. So, fine. So
Yep.
we have to first assess what are you being motivated by? How accurate is it? Because your brain might be right. You might not be safe and you might not be able to do
Mm,
what you think you quote should.
right.
And then what are your choices for change? Because I may want to make a change using X, Y, or Z choice,
Hmm.
but those choices might not be available to me. Like
Yeah.
I've heard parents say, well, if only I didn't have like the kids and the this. And I'm like, but you do. So like we can beat you up for this mythical fantasy that you don't have access to. Like, why am I
Right.
not doing that? Because you can't. Like
Yeah.
legit, you can't. But there that doesn't mean there's nothing you can do. We have to look
Exactly.
at what can you do of those, what are you willing to do? And that's where change happens.
Ooh.
Not in the I wish I could if only.
Yep.
Because if you can't, you can't. Like, don't beat yourself up. Like
Yeah.
life is life. Some things can't be changed.
Yep.
Other things can.
Exactly. Comes down to choices and seeing what is actually available. I love that. So there's another part in your book where you start talking about family dynamics and how family dynamics can maybe be keeping people stuck.
Oh dear. All right, let's
Um,
go.
I I know. I want to touch on some big ones.
Let's do it.
I have you've touched a lot on relationships, but yeah, so families can keep you stuck and can you explain why families can keep you your family can keep you stuck?
It's so funny. Like I was so harsh in my original draft of the family chapter, and I was like so angry and ranting and rave. I'm like,
Mm,
okay, wait a second, Britt. Not all families are as jacked up as like. Let's maybe speak to generally speaking, most families are doing the best they can, and so that's why the chapter is called the emotionally unskilled family instead of the effed up, you all suck. What the F is wrong with you? I'm not talking to any of you again, family. So,
ah,
emotionally unskilled is the language that I chose. And
great choice.
families are a real big sticky point because family systems, and again, none of this is conscious, it's just how brains brain.
Yeah.
Families are wired not for healing and growth and change. Families are wired to keep everyone alive, small, safe, and so they don't get eaten by lions and tigers and bears. And if we
Mm,
don't update the software, that's going to be how it works, which is why one person in a family changing is usually very threatening to the
yeah.
system. And so the system, again, not intentionally, not
Right.
consciously, will sort of maneuver to keep someone the same. I'll give you a great example.
Mm,
Addiction is a good example of this.
mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
having been on the I'm in the addict side and working in inpatient drug and alcohol rehab,
Yeah.
when someone comes in for like they're called the identified patient. That's the messed up one. That's the one with the problem. The family is like, fix my kid. everything was fine. And if they just would stop drinking, everything would be fine. But like, families are systems. There's not usually like this completely independent thing happening. So once the person who's the identified patient starts getting healthy, all of a sudden the curtain gets pulled back on
Oh, shit.
some family stuff that's not great. And skillful families, families willing to do that work, understand addiction's a family systems problem, not a you problem, and they'll adjust. But a lot of families will unconsciously sabotage the efforts of someone getting sober, because if that person gets sober, who's the identified patient? I'm fine, it's you. If you're fine, then I don't want to look in the mirror, so it's you. So they call it the IP, the identified patient, in addiction and family systems. It's a thing. It's a real thing. And you'll see it if you're the person who is the bad one and suddenly you get healthy. Watch how fast you turn into the black sheep.
That's what I was about to say. The black sheep. See, I didn't
You go
get to
from
go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I didn't get to find out. Well, I found out all this stuff, but it was too late. Like after my mom died, my dad died 10 years later. So I started, like, when I started my healing journey, I couldn't address anybody. Not that I needed to, because it has to be done on the inside, but I couldn't have changed the system even if I wanted to, because two of the biggest contributors were no longer living. But it does mean that I can change going forward. And, with my daughter being 21 now, and stop things for her, because so on and so forth. But it's huge. And I love that you talk about family systems. I didn't talk a little bit. I didn't talk about the shadow part in your book, but I did have the opportunity to interview Dr. Richard Schwartz for a wellness summit. And he did like a session on me.
Oh my God, you got to work with Dick
It was
Schwartz.
amazing. It was so amazing, because we were like all talking like in theory. And then he just goes, well, do you just like want to do kind of a quick session? And I'm like, yes, please, let's do it. It was amazing.
That's so cool. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
Yeah. It was really cool. But you do talk about that. There's just so much to talk about, but you just have to get her book to read it all. She does break down like different family, like in different ways that families can be emotionally unskilled. So, of course, there's all kinds of different dynamics out there. So, she does talk about that. Now the next chapters that you kind of talk about is addictions and habits.
Uh-huh.
And once again, you've kind of touched on this stuff, but why do addictions and quote unquote bad habits happen in the first place? And maybe where can we start addressing those things if people want to be not addicted?
God, it's so funny. I'm like, okay, if you're listening, this book really is not a total downer. Like, it's not
not.
like, it's
It's
really
not.
not. It's fun. I made it as fun as I could possibly make it, because
Yes.
like when you're stuck, you don't want to do, I didn't want to do the deep dive academic jump. It's like, I'm so overwhelmed. I'm so fried. I'm so burnt out. I just
Yep.
need someone to give me the bottom lines. So the
Yes.
science is stuck is not like the deep dive. It's like, okay, listen, here are just the bottom lines. If you
Yes.
want more, I've laid out breadcrumb trails. But this
Yep.
book is the best feedback that I've gotten. I love this so much. Someone said to me, I don't read. I hate reading. Books are dumb. And I liked yours. I was like, oh, yay.
That
Okay.
says something. That
That
says
makes me
something
really
big time.
happy. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing all of that. So it's really not a downer. It's a primer, not a downer.
Yes. Yes.
So addictions and habits. So this goes back to the benefits thing. Anybody that's addicted to anything, whether it's like TikTok or meth, will say, I need to stop because this, and that is bad, and it's bad for me, and my life is, and that's true.
Yep.
But if you do not look at the function of any behavior, whether it's doom scrolling or whatever, you're not going to be able to understand what those parts of you are trying to do. People don't get addicted because they suck. They don't. Like, it's not a moral issue. It's not a you're a bad person, therefore you do drugs. It's There's a part of you that is, again, no excuses. These are explanations. Explanation does not mean excuse, but it helps to understand. If you're addicted, that's because there's a pain in you somewhere that never got, it's like a bone that didn't get properly set. So your system figured out this habit will keep me away from that pain. And so if I do this, I don't have to do that. But if we don't know what this is, then you're going to keep doing this. So we have to kind of go, this is doing a job to protect you from that. So instead of focusing here, we got to go over here and figure out what is it protecting you from? And legit, people come in and they're like, I don't know. Okay, like I get that, because addictions and habits become their own thing, and so it's impossible sometimes to figure it out. So the first order of business is, all right, well, if you're about to die because you have a heroin addiction, we're not going to get to what's your pain point. It's like, we got to get you sobered up, medically detoxed and stable. Sometimes that has to happen first.
Right.
Not always, sometimes. But the ultimate underlying thing with addiction is pain. Now, I've heard people say the opposite of addiction is connection. And if we're surrounded by good, solid social supports, we'll be okay. And there's a lot of merit to that. But the problem, and I've seen this in inpatient drug rehab, people are with other people all the time, all day long, and they don't get better. So yes, social supports, yes, connection, but really the opposite of addiction is, what's the truth of the pain that caused it? Because when we can tolerate the original pain, the addiction is no longer necessary to protect us from it. And Hart's work and Dr. Schwartz's work, I'm a huge advocate of, because it's a safe, gentle, non-shamey, very powerful way to do that, because it's hard work.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I too had heard the quote about the addiction. What's the opposite of addiction is connection. And it, of course, it did make sense at the time. But then when you said it, I'm like, man, that makes even more sense. Like they both can hold truth. Like,
yeah.
And that can be super powerful, you know? We're just kind of breezing through all of this. I have a favorite part. And once again, her book, I swear to God, is not a downer. But there is a part of her book that sometimes when the truth comes out, it will just hit you like a ton of bricks. And this is what happened yesterday. Morning at 9 a.m. I start bawling my eyes out reading your book, and I'm going to tell you why. We get to the chapter of emotional regression.
Oh boy.
And okay, first I'm going to let you, am I going to say it? Why don't you first describe what emotional regression is, and I'm going to tell you why I started sobbing my eyes out.
Goodness. Thank you for telling me that. I like all the therapist parts of me just want to be like, okay, let's turn this thing off and let's go deep. Podcast interview. Yes. Bright side. We're here. This is what we're doing. Emotional regression is, and again, like all the academic, I'm trained. I went to school. I logged the clinical hours. I did all the things, but do we have to use such like multi-syllabic, nonsensical big words to talk about what we're freaking talking about?
Right.
Emotional regression. It's when you feel younger than your chronological age. Like when you're 45 and all of a sudden you feel 9 when you're home for Christmas or whatever your holiday is. That's emotional regression. When you know logically you're a boss bitch and you're a badass, but you're begging your partner not to leave. And I've done that. Like regression, when you feel smaller and younger than your chronological age. That is emotional regression. Okay.
So it's so weird. This question has came up twice to me now of like, my daughter asked me a couple weeks ago, like, Mom, how old do you really feel? And besides the like cliche, well, I feel like I'm 90, but what I really feel. And I said, I think I'm somewhere around 24 or 25, which is no surprise is when my mom died. So where I bawled my eyes out is when I started reading What Causes Regression. And it says emotional regression is caused by psychological homesickness. And it says Maya Angelou wrote, the ache for home lives in all of us, the safe place where we can go and we are not to be questioned. I'm probably going to cry. So I realized yesterday that I don't have the home anymore because I've lost both of my parents. And as soon as I read that, I'm like, that's what's been going on with me recently. I'm like on dating apps and I'm seeing men that are like 40 and I'm 38 and they seem legit like 10 years older than me. And I'm like, where is this coming from? Why does 40 freak me the fuck out? As soon as I read this, I'm like, that's my answer. I don't feel like I'm 38 because clearly there's some unprocessed trauma that's making me feel way younger. And it's so this was a good thing because once again, once you become aware of something, that's when you can finally start to address stuff. Um, so can you talk about maybe how people can start transforming this emotional regression?
Mm,
I'm just quizzing
uh,
you so much.
no, that's fine. It's just this is like the grossest part of all the work I've had to do
Ugh,
personally
of
to get
course.
my life working. And like my life isn't perfect, no one's is, but my life works pretty well now.
Mhm.
This one was the motherfucker. Like this one was, I'm like, please let me detox off of narcissistic abuse. Please let me withdraw off of opiates. Like having
Right.
to reckon with the part of healing is recognizing that the only home really that is consistent, predictable, available, and unconditional is the one inside of us. There is no person, place, or thing ever external that can be home permanently. Like,
Yep.
yes, our people, our loved ones, partners, kids, pets, whatever.
Yeah.
But the only place as an adult that home really exists permanently is inside.
Right.
And until we feel at home inside, we'll be looking for it forever and being really pissed off when people let us down, which they will.
Yep.
And when even the healthiest partners, love should be conditional. Like unconditional love is not a healthy, is not a, for kids and parents, sure.
Right.
But like for two adults, yeah, the conditions of my love are if you beat me up, disrespect me, cheat on me, I will not, I will have love for you because we're all God's children kind of thing. But like, no, you don't have access to me.
Yep.
Healthy love is conditional,
Yeah.
but we want the unconditional, I love you no matter what you do. And that's a legit need. That's why I love parts work
Yep.
because that's inner child stuff. The
Right.
thing that we desperately want more than anything in the world is available, but it's available from my grown up self to my younger self, not
Mm.
looking to my partner, looking to, if you have parents that are alive, people do this all the time as adults. Like, like I look to my living parents to be my parents, but as an adult, like the task of adulthood is to become the parent to your parts.
Mm.
Sucks so bad. Like it's worth it once you do that. There's a tremendous liberation that comes with that, but like it
Yeah.
sucked. I mean, it's like not being like hyperbolic. Like you feel like you're going to die when you're like no one's coming to save me ever. Like I never get that again. And
Yep.
then that's grief.
Yep.
And in our culture, grief is very much a taboo thing. It's like you can only grieve if someone dies, and then you're
Right.
expected to get over it in a year. And that's
Yep.
bullshit.
Yes. Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. It did like anger did come up when you wrote the part of like accepting that you like can't go back to your childhood and stuff like that. And I'm like, this is just stuff because that you wrote there's either two reasons. Either somebody like wants to go back to their childhood because it was so great, or they don't because it was so shitty. And where I get confused with myself is all my big trauma happened in my adult years, like when I lost my mom at 25, when I lost my dad at 35. So now looking back on my childhood, I'm like, I will gladly take my childhood because all really that happened in my childhood was just my dad being an angry, emotionally unavailable person, but it was nothing compared to losing two parents in adulthood. So I get confused. I'm like, maybe that's why I do long for the before 25, before my innocence was stripped and I realized that this world is really, really, really mean, you know?
That
Um,
makes sense. Like, and like anger is a reasonable response to that reality. Like, I get that. That makes a lot of sense. I was angry for a really long time and in denial for a really long time.
oh,
That if your childhood was good, you don't get to keep it. If your childhood was bad, you don't get a redo. And that
yeah,
sounds like really depressing. But
right.
it's also liberating because if childhood is over, and it doesn't mean my inner child is still
Right.
alive. Like I
Yeah.
play and I, do lots of, I'm having the best childhood now at 44 ever. Awesome. But chronologically, you don't get a redo, whether it was awesome or bad. When it's done, it's done. And if we don't grieve it, then our brains will think maybe I can repeat it somehow. And that's when usually that
Mm,
shows up in our intimate lives.
yep. So true. Oh, yeah. I don't know why I wasn't surprised when you said the path to healing is the grieving process. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yep. All right. Well, I got some stuff
Yeah.
to work on because I it was like me and my brother just keep talking about it. And I'm like, why am I getting so quote unquote triggered every time I see a man on these dating apps? And I'm like, I do not seem like I am freaking anywhere near this 40-year-old. Like that is weird to me. And oh, your
Yeah.
your book gave me the answers to really kind of see where I need to work on.
I mean,
So
I feel 16 most of the time until I see actual teenagers. And it's like, oh my God, I'm fully
nothing.
grown. Like, wait, what? Like those things on like social media, they're like, you're old, but are you this old? And I'm like, what the? Yes. Oh, shoot. Like, yep, I am that old, but I don't feel
I know.
I love Alice in Wonderland. It's the most fucked up kid
I
story ever.
haven't seen it. I need to watch it now that you said what you said in the book.
It's good. It's messed up. But like in the original like canon, she says it's very confusing being so many different sizes in one day. I'm like, I get that because on any given day, I'm 15 for an infant, an angry 16-year-old, a
Yep.
21-year-old who's just learned that like life exists. And
Yep.
it's very confusing because yeah, we're every age that we've ever been. All of those
Yep.
parts of us live there. So
Yep.
yeah,
Mm,
yay. But like adulting is actually awesome.
right.
I do advocate the whole like I hate adulting, it sucks. It does, but like when you're a kid, you have no power, no agency,
Right.
no autonomy. I would much
Mm,
rather be an adult than have somebody else in charge of my life ever
yeah.
again.
Exactly. Well, that's one of the big, you just said it. Like you don't have agency, you don't have power. And that's where a lot of people like get stuck in the first place because they are this old and they're thinking they don't have any choices and they have realized, oh shit, I've still been living by all my parents' ideologies and their rules. And then you realize, oh wait, I do get to choose what I want to eat for dinner and who I want to marry and when I want to marry. Like, wow, this is actually pretty cool.
Like I saw a meme that was like, you could just like go buy as an adult, you can just go buy a birthday cake just cuz. Like you can do that. Like you could go to the store today and just go buy a birthday cake and then eat it. Like what?
Exactly.
I can do that. I have done that. Like not a birthday cake, but like I'm gonna just buy a cake because it feels so taboo. Because my family of origin rules where don't eat
Yeah.
anything. So like don't get fat, don't eat any like the whole thing.
Yeah.
So buying
Mm,
cake on a Tuesday feels like the most
yeah.
liberating thing
Yeah.
some days.
Exactly. Very, very adult like, very adult like. Okay. In your book, you have tons. Every single chapter has practical steps, tools, exercises, so on and so forth that are so helpful for everything we have talked about and more. There's more, guys. Don't worry. Um, what are some of your favorite tools or exercises that have just totally like stood out to you that you're like, if you want to start somewhere, start here?
Start here. Did I
Yeah.
tell you I have a workbook coming out in June for the sciences
I
deck?
saw it on your Instagram.
Yeah,
I
it's
am ready.
coming.
I'm
All
ready.
exercises. It's like
Oh,
nothing but if you want, like, I don't want to read, I just want to do shit. Like it's coming out in June. Oh God, what's my favorite exercise? It's tough because
yeah.
it's like, well, for which part of
I
me
know.
and for which issue. And like if I had to pick one exercise to rule them all, it
Hmm.
would be validating. And again, validating is not excusing, but validating that every last symptom, thought process, bad habit, whatever your thing is, at some point that all made sense. And if you are alive today, it's because your brain did a brilliant job on your behalf of keeping you alive. That does not mean we have to play by the same rules and the same beliefs and the same behaviors. But my favorite exercise is at frequent intervals, remind yourself there's no such thing as a crazy person. It's not a thing. And I say that as someone with severe mental illness on both sides of my family, like the really fringy stuff, myself included. But that's not crazy. It makes sense in context. If you read the file of even the most wild looking symptoms, you're going to go, oh, wow, I get how we got from A to B. Like that makes sense. So telling yourself, this makes sense. I have choices. If I had to pick one, that would probably be the catch-all that covers everything.
Yes, I agree. And it's so important because I feel like validation also finally leads to acceptance. I had somebody on my podcast that talked about how denial is such a powerful like survival skill. And I'm like, can you explain that? And as soon as she did, I'm like, oh shit, yeah, that's why I was, denying my mom was not gone and all this stuff. I'm like, it really can keep you alive for what you need to get through in your life. But when you finally do have these choices and like validating all this stuff, your life will literally change in so many ways, and then you just keep going and keep going.
Well, our language is so shamey, right? We battle depression and we fight a day. It's like the enemy does not live inside your brain. Your brain is on your side. Like, yeah, bad shit happens. I'm not saying it doesn't, but like your brain is reacting to the bad shit. Your brain is not the bad thing. Your brain is good. Like even using and I do it too, so no shame. But like the language of anxiety attacks or panic attacks, like you don't say check engine light attacks and you don't say smoke alarm attacks. Like the smoke alarm is not attacking you. It's trying to help you. So anxiety doesn't actually attack you. It feels like it. It really feels like it's awful. But like your brain's on your side. Like imagine if your inner critic's voice was kind and quiet. That right there, that shift alone could change everything.
Yep. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, that's why I'm so happy there's people like you to kind of, change the language, make this stuff easy and digestible, have somebody pick up a book that maybe they wouldn't otherwise pick up. And it could, you want to change your life, pick up this book and it's going to address everything that you could imagine. It covers the most important things for sure. The chess thing at the end of the book was really, really cool.
I was watching a lot of Queen's Gambit when I wrote this book.
Yes.
On
It
repeats.
was, yeah. Can you kind of just tell people like what the chess thing I'm talking about is?
And I don't play chess for the record. Like it's such a mystery to me. And I'm not good at math. Like I love the pieces and I love the romance of it. And the Queen's Gambit is probably the best show I've ever seen ever.
Yeah.
But I don't play chess and you don't need to play chess. My point with and I have like a chessboard and this whole thing happening is that if there it is, my little chessboard.
I can show it kind of,
yeah. So the idea is, first of all, like if you can externalize all your shit, think of it like a game board and all of the different pieces. My relationship to my mother and my relationship to alcohol and my fitness, like these are all pieces on your board. And as you're looking to see what move do I make, because I know for me, there were so many things wrong. I didn't know which thing to start with. It's like, where do I start? I'm broke and miserable and addicted and being abused. And like, I don't even know which way is up. So if you look at your game board, the question is, knowing your choices, what's the easiest move you can make? A lot of people are quick to devalue anything they do if it's easy. Like somehow, if you're not miserable, it doesn't count. It's like, if you can make an easy move, then like do it. That counts. Like moving a pawn in chess counts. It's not sexy. No one's going to like create a reel around, look, I moved my little tiny piece an inch, but like those moves counts. And the whole point of the chess metaphor is all moves, even the easy moves count. And as long as there's a move to be made, and again, unless you're being oppressed or there's systemic stuff going on outside your control, there's almost always a move that can be made. I don't like my choices, but they're there. And I need to make a move to keep myself going because you don't get stuck as long as you're moving forward. It might be a slug, but stuck turns into unstuck the second you move any of your pieces.
Yeah. That the game board was so big to see just the different, like, that's the other side of the game board right there. Like, holy shit, if I just make these 3 easy moves, I am a lot closer to where I want to be or whatever. And you're right. How us human beings like totally undervalue easy moves is the most crazy thing ever because it's like, no, it's not hard enough.
Right.
Girl,
Like,
what
or
are you
yeah,
doing?
I took a walk, but it's not like I ran a marathon. I'm like, you took a walk. Like, yay,
I
you. Like, that's a thing that
know.
a lot of people didn't manage to do today. So, part of the thing about getting unstuck is you have to give yourself credit for all of
Yes.
the moves, no matter how small. And I
Yes.
love the like there's a rule in chess that I've learned. I don't play it, but I've learned some of the rules that like the pawns, like the lowest, most insignificant pieces, if you hang in there with them long enough and they make it across the board, they turn into queens. So I'm
Ah,
like, okay, that's cool. Like,
okay. That is cool. That
yeah.
you're like, there's a reason why I did that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Britt, your book is just awesome. And you
Thank
are awesome.
you.
Like, seriously, I just get so excited to, get to have conversations with people that truly are like helping people in such big ways because I text one of my clients as soon as I finish your book and I'm like, please go get this book. It is going to be so helpful.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have probably convinced everybody listening to this episode to go get your book. So where can people find out more about your book and your work?
Yay. So yeah, like find me on Instagram where I have terrible boundaries. I'm there a lot and I don't have a social media person. It's just me on there. So like I
Yay.
try to answer all my messages and say hi to everybody.
Yeah.
At Britt Frank, and Britt has 2 T's. The book and the workbook's available for pre-order now. It comes out June 4th. And my website is scienceofstuck.com.
Perfect. I love it. I love it. Okay. Before we go, I ask all my guests this very last question. In your own words, what does the bright side of life mean to you?
Oh, that's a good question. What does the bright side of life mean to me? That's the hardest question of this whole conversation. The bright side of life is anywhere I am aware of my choices and I have the energy to make them.
Mm, so good. That is so good.
That's my answer for today.
I love it. I love hearing I always ask my guests this and it's just so awesome to hear each unique perspective and answer because we all have a different definition of what the bright side of life means to us. So, thank you again. This was awesome.
You're wonderful. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
I wanna see the light.